My name's Bond. James Bond.
Ah yes, gather round, brave television adventurers, as we journey back to a peculiar little British cartoon. One featuring an eye-patched mouse, absurd villains, and enough wit to quietly invade American television screens, forever changing the cartoon landscape in ways few could have predicted. Steady now, this could get delightfully ridiculous. Remember when discovering a cartoon actually felt like finding treasure? Back in the 1980s, you didn't just open an app and instantly watch whatever you wanted. You kind of stumbled into shows. Maybe you caught something at a friend's house, or right after school while the TV was just on in the background. Sometimes you were just flipping through channels and landed on something strange enough that you had to stop and watch. For me, that show was Danger Mouse. Danger Mouse premiered here in America on Nickelodeon. And Nickelodeon wasn't as easy to get back then as it is now. When it first launched in the late 70s and really started growing in the 80s, it was part of cable packages. And not everyone had those. Cable itself was still kind of a luxury in a lot of homes. And even if you had it, you didn't always get every channel. Nickelodeon was the cool, kids-only network. One afternoon, after school, I was over at a friend's house, and we were just hanging out in front of the TV when this cartoon came on. There's this mouse wearing an eye patch, basically acting like a tiny secret agent straight out of a spy movie. And from the second it started, I was all in. If you somehow missed this wonderfully weird little show, Danger Mouse was a British animated spy comedy produced by Cosgrove Hall for Times Television. It first aired in 1981 and kept going all the way through 1992, which is a surprisingly long run for something that feels this offbeat and quirky. At its core, the show is a full-on parody of British spy stories, especially things like James Bond and Danger Man. It takes all the familiar elements of that world, the daring missions, the over-the-top villains, the gadgets, the drama, and flips them just enough to make everything feel a little ridiculous in the best way. Because instead of some smooth, unshakable secret agent saving the world, you get a tiny white mouse with an eye patch. And somehow, that's exactly what makes it work. The show never tries to explain it or justify it. It just leans all the way in and lets the absurdity carry everything forward. It moved fast, the humor was sharp and a little sarcastic, and it didn't talk down to you. It trusted that you'd keep up, even when the jokes got a little odd or the pacing got a little frantic. Every now and then, it would go so far into the ridiculous that you couldn't help but laugh just at how committed it was. It didn't feel like most of the other cartoons that were on at the time. It had its own rhythm, its own style, and its own sense of humor. And once it clicked, it stuck with you. Before we go any further, if you know Danger Mouse, then you already know exactly where this is headed. There's kind of an unspoken rule. You can't talk about the show without bringing up that intro. And if you don't know it, well, you're about to, because this wasn't just any cartoon theme song. This was one of those intros that hit you immediately. The kind that sneaks into your head and just stays there. Catchy, a little dramatic, a little over the top. It sets the tone for the whole show before you even know what's going on. It's the kind of intro that makes you stop what you're doing and actually pay attention. So yeah, before we go any deeper into Danger Mouse, we've got to hit play. Okay, first off, I should probably apologize. Because if that theme song is already stuck in your head now, yeah, that's on me. But let's keep going. The setup for Danger Mouse is wonderfully ridiculous in the best possible way. Right from the start, it just throws logic out the window and invites you to roll with it. Danger Mouse works for the British Secret Service, partnered up with his sidekick Penfold, who is basically a bundle of nerves in a suit. Penfold is constantly stressed, always a few seconds away from panicking, and somehow still ends up tagging along on these world-saving missions. Then there's their boss, Colonel K, who's in charge of the whole operation, even though he's slightly confused about what's going on. He's giving orders, running global spy missions, and half the time you get the feeling he's just hoping everything works itself out. And their headquarters. A giant red mailbox on Baker Street. Not hidden deep underground, not inside some high-tech government facility, a regular-looking mailbox sitting out in the open. Somehow, nobody questions it. Every episode drops them into a new situation that's somehow even more over the top than the last one. One minute they're dealing with villains trying to steal famous landmarks. The next, they're up against giant robots. Or some completely bizarre world domination scheme that makes less sense the more you think about it. But the real magic here wasn't just the plots. It was the humor. The narrator isn't just telling the story. He's part of it. He talks directly to the audience, cuts into scenes, argues with the characters, and breaks the fourth wall whenever he feels like it. Sometimes it felt like the show itself knew how ridiculous it was and decided to lean into it even harder. As a kid, half the jokes went right over my head. But the other half, those hit perfectly. Mostly because everything was just so unapologetically weird and committed to the bit. And that's really what made it stick. Now that we've talked about the heroes, we've got to talk about the villains. Because Danger Mouse knew how to make its bad guys just as memorable as the good ones. Front and center, you've got Baron Silas Greenback, a wheezing, power-hungry toad who's completely obsessed with taking over the world. And not in a subtle way either. This guy is all about big, dramatic, overly complicated schemes that somehow feel threatening and completely ridiculous at the same time. He's always got a plan. It's always elaborate, and it almost always falls apart in the most spectacular way possible. Then there's Stiletto, his loyal crow henchman. Loyal in the sense that he follows orders, but not always in the way you'd want. He constantly mishears things, gets confused, and somehow manages to make every situation just a little worse. But you can tell he means well. He's just not exactly helping. And then you've got Nero the Caterpillar. Small, quiet, easy to overlook, but every now and then you get the feeling Nero might be the one who actually knows what's going on. Like beneath all the chaos, he might be the closest thing Greenback has to a real strategist. What really makes all of this work, though, is how they bounce off of each other. There's this chaotic, unpredictable energy every time they're on screen. Plans unravel, conversations go sideways, and things spiral into nonsense in the best possible way. Even when the story gets completely ridiculous, and it definitely does, you're still having fun, just watching how these characters interact. Because at the end of the day, the villains weren't just there to be stopped. They were half the reason you kept watching. Looking back, it's impressive how much work went into something that feels so silly. This was old school animation. We're talking thousands of hand-drawn frames coming together just to make a single episode work. Every movement, Every expression, every ridiculous moment had to be drawn out and pieced together the long way. There's something kind of amazing about that, especially when you think about how fast and chaotic the show feels when you're watching it. And what's interesting is, it didn't even start out aiming to be quite this wild. The creators, Mark Hall and Brian Cosgrove, had something a little more straight-faced in mind early on. But somewhere along the way, the humor took over. And once it did, the show really found its identity. That ended up being the best thing that could have happened, because that weirdness became the secret weapon. The show didn't just allow itself to be absurd, it leaned into it completely. That's what gave it so much personality. A big part of that came from the voices. David Jason brought Danger Mouse to life with this perfect mix of confidence, charm, and just enough humor to keep things from ever feeling too serious. He sounded like a hero, but one who was always just a little bit in on the joke. Then you've got Terry Scott as Penfold, who basically turns nervous energy into an art form. The panic, the hesitation, the way he always seems completely out of his depth. It all comes together to make him one of the most memorable sidekicks, and even the limitations of the show somehow worked in its favor. You can tell they had to get creative with the budget. Some scenes are a little darker. Some animation gets reused here and there. But instead of taking you out of it, it actually adds to the charm. It gives the whole thing a kind of cozy, handcrafted feel. Like you're watching something that was put together with just enough resources, a lot of creativity, and a willingness to make it work. And in the end, that's part of why it stands out. It wasn't trying to be perfect. It was just trying to be fun, and it nailed that completely. Years later, Danger Mouse made its way back. In 2015, BBC brought it back for a whole new generation. You kind of got to go into something like that a little cautious, right? Because reboots, they can be hit or miss. But this one, they really got the tone right. They updated the look, tightened things up for a modern audience, but they didn't lose what made the original so much fun. The humor, the ridiculous spy missions, that self-aware wink the show always had. It still felt like Danger Mouse, just with a fresh coat of paint. And that's not easy to pull off. Most reboots tend to fall into one or two traps. Either they ignore what people loved in the first place, or they try so hard to recreate it that it feels forced. Danger Mouse somehow landed right in that sweet spot in the middle. Watching it again now, what really stands out is just how well it still holds up. While working on this, I went back and rewatched a few episodes. And that charm, it's still there. It's hard to explain, but the moment it starts, it just clicks. There's something about it that still pulls you in the same way it did back then. And yeah, it kind of warms your heart a bit. It's not just nostalgia either. There's a level of care in how it's put together. The pacing, the delivery, the way the characters play off of each other, it all still works. And at the center of it all, you've got this tiny mouse trying to save the world. Not because he's perfect, not because he has all the answers, but because he keeps showing up. Eye patch on, confidence somewhere between bold and just a little unsure. That balance is exactly what makes it work. Maybe even better than you remember. For me, Danger Mouse will always take me back to being a kid after school at a friend's house. Just sitting there, not expecting anything, and then stumbling onto something completely unexpected. one random afternoon turned into a full-on cartoon obsession. And if you grew up with it, you probably know exactly what I mean. You can still hear the music. You remember the chaos. Penfold panicking every 5 seconds. Greenback cooking up another wild plan. And that narrator just casually breaking in with a sarcastic comment like he's part of the whole thing. And if you're discovering it now, you've got a lot of fun ahead of you. Because sometimes it's those weird, slightly offbeat shows that end up sticking with you the longest. The ones you didn't plan to find, but never forgot once you did. Going back through this one has been a blast for me. I've really been enjoying digging through some of these older, kind of forgotten cartoons. You know, it's funny. Every time I finish one, another one pops into my head. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go back and watch that one too. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit the like button, subscribe, ring that bell, and let me know down in the comments. What's a cartoon you accidentally discovered that stuck with you? You never know. It could be a future episode. And always remember, stay minty, stay fresh. We'll see you in the next one.